We're back with a Fox News alert. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy says U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will visit Kyiv tomorrow. This as Russia breaks its promise and storms a steel plant where thousands of Ukrainian civilians and soldiers are holed up in Mariupol. And new chilling satellite images show a second mass grave near that city. Ukraine claims Russia is trying to conceal the slaughter of civilians in Mariupol. Griff Jenkins is live in Kyiv with more. Griff?
Hey, Joey, I tell you, President Zelenskyy certainly caught Washington by surprise making that announcement, and neither the Pentagon, State Department, or White House are confirming it, but here is some of what Zelenskyy said. Listen.
Tomorrow, we have people from the United States visiting. There will be meetings with the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State of the United States, Mr. Blinken. They will be here. We will be waiting for the time it is safe enough for the President of the United States to come here and support the Ukrainian people as well.
So he wants to discuss the type of weapons he needs and the time frame for the delivery. Here is a list of the current weapons that are on their way in that most recent aid package: 72 howitzers, 144 artillery rounds, 72 tactical vehicles, and 121 Ghost drones. Meanwhile, as you point out, the situation in Mariupol is indeed dire. Ukrainian officials say Russian forces are trying to storm that steel plant where the last of Mariupol's defenders are holding out, despite Putin's order to halt the attack. And it comes as Russian missiles strike the southern port of Odessa, killing at least 5, including an infant. This after Moscow indicates they want full control of southern Ukraine, which has the mayor of Mykolaiv, a southern town, worried they could be next.
We under bombardment almost every day. They use cluster bombs, cluster missiles that kill human force. I ask all the people who still live in the city to leave the city.
And the fighting in that eastern Donbass has really intensified. Ukrainian officials saying that the Russians have taken some 40 small towns in that area, and we expect that to be perhaps the focus of the discussion if indeed Blinken and Austin come here, because it's going to take a lot of weapons to deal with this new offensive. Joey?
Yeah, Griff, we got some questions for you. I'm going to start first. The question I have is, I've watched the Kirby press, Pentagon Press Secretary Kirby. I've watched his briefings, and he keeps going back to the reason why we didn't send all of this at once is the need is changing. Can we confirm, is the need now to only defend the parts of Ukraine where Russia has pulled back, or is the need to go after the Russian forces in places like Odessa or Mariupol to take those 40 towns back, to take those big corridors back?
Well, that's an outstanding question, and you well know that the needs are determined by the battle space and exactly what they're trying to either defend or go on the offensive. And as we have seen, and now it's after midnight, we are now in the 60th day of this war. The needs on the battlefield are quite different. If you talk to Ukrainian commanders, like I did with the chief of staff, Zelensky's chief of staff here, he says he needs a lot more than what John Kirby's willing to give him.
Griff, I'm wondering, this latest package that was passed to send weapons over, I mean, obviously Zelensky's been essentially begging for this kind of help from the United States. And so there are logistics with respect to getting the weapons there, making sure that people are trained to use them in the proper way before they actually, practically can be used in the field. And many people say it's too late. You mentioned the fact that we're on, day 60 here, and that the forces and their power, their stamina, the Ukrainian forces, that is, this is tough to take on. Where was the help, and why wasn't it there sooner?
Well, Jackie, it's been described as a snail's pace by some over here, and Joey can certainly tell you, artillery, 155 millimeter artillery takes a lot of effort to move, and it's got to move all the way across the country, assuming it comes through Lviv in the west. And so you put your finger on something, Jackie, and that is it getting there fast enough? I just reported the Ukrainian officials saying today that some 42 towns in the eastern Donbass have fallen, and that will then be for Ukrainian forces to try and take that area back. And it's important to note, too, that this battle space is different than the first phase that we saw on the attack that failed here in Kyiv. In the eastern Donbass, they've been fighting this for 8 years. Russia is quite familiar with this fight.
Griff, Leo Terrell here. Look, we've had Boris Johnson from the UK show up. We had Macron come up from France. Our president called Putin a war criminal. You look at these mass graves. Why not Joe Biden in Kyiv? Instead, we get Blinken and Lloyd Austin. Why not the president take the lead and show the moral leadership to show up in Kyiv?
You know, Leo, when I interviewed yesterday Andriy Yermak, the chief of staff to Zelenskyy, he is his right-hand man, and I asked him that pointedly, should President Biden come? He said the leader of the free world is Joe Biden. It is upon him to come here because the future of not just Ukraine, but the future of democracy and freedom is at stake. And then we just heard from President Zelenskyy that he is waiting for when it'll be safe, in his words, for Biden to come. So I think there's quite a lot of pressure for Biden to make a visit here. We'll have to see if that happens, and even if Blinken and Austin show up, because honestly, there's a reason why you don't announce these things until it's happened, because of a security reason. So it's a little bit of a surprise that Zelenskyy did make that public ahead of what is perceived to be a possible visit tomorrow.
Hey, Griff, how are the Ukrainian people themselves doing? You know, it felt like there was a lot of momentum on their side initially. People were really hopeful that they wouldn't just be there to receive it and fend people off from Russia. They were going to win this war. But you guys have just talked about several times the fact we are at day 60. 2 months into this thing. Has there been any dip in morale? How is it feeling there on the ground with the people?
Laura, such a good question. And remember, we're on the eve. Tomorrow is the Orthodox Easter here. People will be going to that St. Michael's Golden Dome Monastery behind me, along with several other churches here in the capital area. And they are coming with heavy hearts because they've seen the atrocities and war crimes that have been carried out in places like Bucha and Borodyanka, places I've visited. And I've seen people devastated because the Russian forces have absolutely targeted indiscriminately civilians. But at the same time, they are stealing their resolve and their defiance. And I think it has, Laura, a lot of it to do with President Zelenskyy, who has led this nation. Everybody thought he would leave when things got hot on day one. He stayed now for 60 days, and every single night he has addressed the Ukrainian people and stood out there leading them. And so they're heartbroken. It's a difficult Orthodox Easter tomorrow, but yet the nation is united from what I can see, and they certainly are defiant still as they head into this next phase of the war, Laura.
Well, Griff, thanks for the reporting. It's excellent as always, and we want you to stay safe, of course, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.